what do you feel are the top 3 issues facing our country?
So the top issue, without a doubt, is the crisis at the border. And I think some of the other issues kind of fall under that as well. So for me, in my military background, I think the security of our nation is the most important thing. I worry about the safety of my children. I worry about the sovereignty of our nation. And obviously it's at threat with illegal immigrants coming across the border, with drug dealers. We also have known terrorists. New information just came out in the last 24 hours about that. Secondly, the economy. I've been working really hard in this district, and the individuals that I'm talking to are giving me feedback that they're having trouble making ends meet. People can't meet their basic needs by putting food on the table. They're having to use credit cards just to supply food and meet their basic bills and obligations. So for me, those are definitely the top priorities in our district. And I think my background gives me a lot of insight. So I'm a psych mental health provider. I hear people, they're in a state of crisis. I'm a good listener, and I think this will make me a good candidate in addressing these issues that our nation faces.
Thank you. Kevin Bishop. Mr. Bishop, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, I think we'll all honestly be the same on this. The number one issue we're all going to talk about is the border. I've been to the border 3 times since Joe Biden's been elected president. I've been to Arizona twice. I was just in Eagle Pass a few months ago. It's the number one issue in this district. It's the number one issue in the country. I would love to tell you I can solve it all. I can't. President Trump's going to have to be elected. But when he does, he will institute certain policies that I will back him to the hilt. Remain in Mexico, Title 42 expulsion authority. He also will do some changes on Section 287G, where they go to our local jails and pick up illegal immigrants and deport them. And then you'll also see, you'll see lots of things on the deportation front. So I've been there. I've talked to the Border Patrol. I've talked to ICE. I know all about this. I can help President Trump if he wins, when he wins on day one. Second issue is, Sheri, I think we all agree as well, it's inflation. You know, price of gas, groceries, and dining out have gone up 25% since Joe Biden's been elected president. We saw yesterday the Federal Reserve held interest rates where they were. We've got home equity loans, 30 years, they're at 7% now. So the average family's struggling. Inflation is a big bite, taking a big bite out of the family budget. The third issue I would say right now is one that's going up a little bit on the scale, and it's a rise of, frankly, concern, something I didn't think would ever be really a topic for us, but maybe the rise of anti-Semitism. We're seeing this on college campuses, a little bit of anti-Semitism. We're also seeing a lot of bad stuff happen on college campuses, to be honest with you. Not in addition to anti-Semitism, college campuses used to be a place where free speech was actually promoted. Now it's actually discouraged. And universities have speakers that can't come in and speak. Ben Shapiro, who I enjoy listening to, when he is considered a threat to come speak on a university campus, that means we're not doing a very good job promoting free speech on a university. So those are some of the issues. And then I'll be happy to talk about local ones as well, too, but I'm limited time. So.
Franky Franco. Mr. Franco, do you need me to repeat the question?
Good. Yeah, so when I announced my candidacy, one of the first things my wife and I did, she's a speech pathologist at a school, so she had a spring break. So we did a spring break tour of the district. It was a lot of fun, all 11 counties in 4 days. And it's a large area, so we talked to a lot of folks. I knew that the border security issue, I expected that to be a top issue. I'd seen polling. I know that that's on the mind of people in the district. But it was really interesting to walk into random places, walked into a McDonald's in Saluda, talked to 2 guys, and they just finished hunting, who was going there to grab a coffee, and they're like, tell them about my candidacy, and they're like, you got to secure the border. The border's a problem. You hear it everywhere. And so that's absolutely a concern, and we need to address it. Now, look, I'm a son of immigrants, but there's a right way to come into the country. There's a right way to come into the country. So we have to secure the border. We got to make sure that we do mandatory entry and exit tracking. We have to solve the asylum abuse. Those are things we have to solve. Second, inflation, government spending out of control, $34 trillion debt. That is it's incredible to even think about that as a business person. How many of you guys can do deficit spending? Does that work in your business? Are you able to spend more than you make? What happens if you do that? You go out of business. But somehow in the federal government, that's not how it works. And it's absolutely crazy. That's not how it works in municipal government. That's not how it works in the county government. That's not how it works in the state government. Why is that how it works in the federal government? It's insane, and we need to stop it. And the last point is around representation. The other common question that came up was term limits. And I think the reason term limits comes up a lot because people are tired of career politicians. People are tired of electing all these promises that are being made and not fulfilled. I think we need better representation.
Thank you. Mr. Philip Healy.
The top three issues facing our nation. We have many, many more than that, but the top three issues, the top one is a tie. We've got an out of control, disastrous Biden border. President Trump had the safest border in history when he was president. We must finish President Trump's wall, funding the wall, and have a mass deportation of all these millions of Biden illegals that the Democrats want to, if they can steal it, they want to try and give amnesty to all these illegals for votes. Right up there with the border is right here. Washington has a spending problem. They pass bills that they haven't read, pack $1.2 trillion in a 1,000-page bill. They passed it in one day without reading, because it took me about a week and a half to read it. This needs to stop. This is the root cause of the runaway inflation and the weakening of the dollar, causing everything to escalate in price. So we've got to get our financial house in order. And as an expert negotiator over the last 20 years, putting together 1,200 deals, I can bring people together. I have confidence in my abilities to bring people together as both an expert negotiator, a mediator, a military veteran, and just everything. We just need to get our financial house in order. You can't run a business without having a balanced budget. You can't spend more than you bring in. Why are we sending billions of dollars to Ukraine when we've got issues right here in America, right here in the 3rd District, that money could have been used for? Instead of raising taxes, why don't we split that money to Ukraine up and send it to 50 states, 50 different states, and have the infrastructure taken care of? Also, judicial reform needs to be reformed so that what's happening to President Trump will never happen again.
Mr. LaPierre. And do you need me to repeat the question?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So as an executive at a $65 billion company, I can tell you with confidence that if we sat around a decision-making table and I brought to the conversation generalities, the people in that room would say, "You're fired." So let me give you a plan on our southern border with some teeth. Congress needs to declare a war on the Mexican drug cartels. With that, we need to establish a militarized no-entry zone along our southern borders, 5 miles in Mexico, 5 miles in the U.S., with or without the Mexican government's consent. We need the drug cartels and the drug lords, when they bring fentanyl across the border and they're killing our citizens, the death penalty needs to be on the table. No birthright citizenship. No. No catch and release. No. We've got to get back to the Remain in Mexico policy that Donald Trump had that worked. So that is the specific strategic plan on that first issue that I will bring to the table. No generalities. Remember, you're fired. Secondly, the economy. We've got to stop the spending. We've got to lower taxes. We've got to lower the regulatory burden in America. And we've got to let Adam Smith's invisible hands in the free market reign. Number three, we've got to protect our children. This nonsense of exposing our children to filth in the public libraries is just that. It's nonsense. In 1 hour, I'm going to have an interview with Channel 4 about this issue. This is child abuse. This is child neglect. And we've got to stand up as a state and do something about it. Do you agree?
Ms. Murday, would you like for me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. What do you feel are the top 3 issues facing our country?
So my platform here is actually what I feel are the top 3 issues facing our country, and they're a little bit different than everyone else's. The first one is how divided we've become. Families aren't having Thanksgiving dinner together anymore. That's a problem to me. We can't get a single bill passed per year. Our government no longer functions. That's a problem to me. We need to come back together as Americans and remember that that's really the important thing, or nothing will work anymore. The second thing is that the government no longer works for the people. My town halls are part of how I want to address that problem, but I also, apart from legislation, really want to amend the Constitution. I think it's time. We haven't had that in a while. We need an amendment for a balanced budget, one to end birthright citizenship, and one for campaign finance reform and enacting term limits. So I think if we're able to accomplish that, that will go a long way toward getting our government back to the people. And then the third thing is rebuilding the American dream. We need to bring our manufacturing back. We need to shut down the border, although I think, again, ending birthright citizenship would almost immediately end the border crisis, because then there's no benefit whatsoever from setting foot on American soil. And then, yes, okay, there we go. Support for traditional families is a big thing for me, because people aren't really having children anymore due to the economy. So I think that's something we can focus on. We can try and prevent this foreign ownership of houses that just sit there empty. We can support small farms so food is less expensive. We can drill so gas is less expensive. There's just a lot we can do to support families. Thank you.
Mr. Best? Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am. Top 3 issues there are in American society right now. Yes, it's the border crisis, but to me, in my opinion, it is health care for people, citizens, for older citizens that work hard and having a hard time to live off the Social Security. We have women's rights. That's on the ballot right now, because women right now are having a fight against the government with them choosing to what they do with their bodies. The third issue also, I say, is the economy. We have to be able to create jobs that's livable wages for people to be able to live and be able to have the American dream. The American dream is fell by the wayside right now because a lot of people are struggling. When I'm out talking with people, they are having a hard time paying bills, having a hard time buying groceries in their home. And that is terrible, because if you create a nation that's struggling to be able to afford things, what's going to happen is it's going to be a powder keg, and people will explode. And we don't want to have chaos with people not having money to be able to afford things, because people's back get pushed to the wall. It's no telling what can happen. So we have to address those issues. And also with a lot of elderly that are living now, they can't afford to be able to pay bills. Most of them get Social Security, $600 a month. You can't live off that. So we have to be able to address those issues to be able to help bring this country together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, the next question will go to you first. What are your feelings about appropriations to bills being earmarks? And are you pro earmarks or against earmarks, and why?
Yes. Let me be clear on this point, and I'm glad this is an excellent question here. First, I thought Jeff Duncan did a very good job for this district. I agreed with 98% of what he did, but I want to be clear on this one point. I will be different than Jeff Duncan on this point. I believe, as the 3rd district representative, we have an obligation to ask for specific funding items for this district. And my policy on this will be very clear. If you're a town, you're a city, you're a county, you're an economic development agency, and you come to my office and you are all in agreement, hey, we're putting some money in, we need some help with this water and sewer system, we want the federal government to kick in some money, will you help us? My answer will be yes. But here's the thing. I don't want to be Huey Long of Louisiana where he wanted to run every town and know everything. I don't care. I don't want to get into that. But when your towns, when your cities, your counties, economic development, when you're all on board and you're putting in your money and you've got a plan, I will be your partner. This is a part of the job that really does not get discussed in this campaign. This is the first time we've had this question, and I'm very glad we did, because this is a huge part of a congressman's job, is to work with this, to cut through the red tape, but also to help our local communities. And I agreed with Jeff on so many votes, but this is one area that I will be very different. I'm going to go in a totally different direction. But again, you get your team on board, everybody figure out which way we're rolling, and I'll come in and I'll grab an oar and I'll help you with it as well too. And you can call it earmarked, you can call it member-directed spending, you can call it whatever you want. I don't care. I'm going to help you. I want to be a partner. I think that's an incredibly important piece of the job for a congressman to do, and I'm ready to do it.
Mr. Franco? Do you need me to repeat the question?
Good. You know, the conversations I have around the district, I've been having a lot of meetings with mayors and council people in the various counties. And what I hear is there's a great desire to partner, to work together. And I think the role of the representative is to be a really, really good partner. It's my job, it would be my job as your representative to be in Washington representing the interests of the district. And if there's interests of the districts that require funding, I need to be open to having those conversations and seeing what I can do to help. Now, I want to be clear, we're in the challenge we're having is that we have a budget crisis. There's a $34 trillion debt that we have to figure out how to solve. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on, it's hard to say on one hand, like, hey, I want to eliminate the national debt. I want to have a balanced budget. And then on the other hand, say, we're going to be giving out a lot of money. We're going to have to figure out how to balance that. We need to have a plan that leads us towards a balanced budget that starts paying down the national debt. We need to start instituting responsible spending. But I would be a representative who would have an open ear and listen to the needs of the district. I want to make sure that my district is benefited. So you have to look at the whole picture and figure out how we're going to balance these issues. That's my response.
We need full transparency with our budgeting. I will oppose earmarks if they come in 1,000-page packages that nobody reads. I will oppose them. Yes, we need money for the districts, but we're $34 trillion in debt. Instead of giving to our districts, instead of giving to our states, instead of giving to our own country, they've been given to foreign aid to foreign countries for the last 3 decades. That madness needs to end so we can get our financial house in order. This 1,000-page bill was passed in one day. Nobody read it. There's a lot of earmarks in there for Biden's liberal woke agenda. I oppose earmarks. If it's important, let's do a one-page standalone bill and get the funding needed for the district. What's wrong with passing a one-page standalone bill? If you need $50 million for a road project, do it on a one-page bill. not a 1,000-page bill that nobody reads. So I would oppose earmarks. We need transparency. We've got to get our financial house in order. We're 34 trillion in debt. We're spending like a drunken sailor, and I've seen plenty of them with no compass. So we've got to get our house in order and stop the reckless spending.
Mr. LaPierre, and do you need me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So I bet you didn't know I'm a passionate Frenchman. I'm going to put my Columbo hat on just for a second, and I'm going to scratch my head. Remember Columbo, the guy, the private eye that just, he looked like he was kind of dumb, but he asked a lot of good questions. So everyone here tonight, you ask them, do you want term limits? Oh, yeah, term limits, term limits, term limits. And why? Because we do not, we want to stop the lobbyists, we want to stop the special interest, and we want to stop the power of long-term political operatives. Is that fair? I mean, term limits? So what does pork do? What does earmarks do? It emboldens the lobbyist, it emboldens the special interest, and it emboldens the power of the long-term professional political operative, of which I am not one. I am anti-establishment, and I wear that badge proudly. Pork and earmarks are 1950s kind of politics. That is old school politics. We need straight up bills. I agree with Phil. You know, let's just put the bills out there, up or down, yes or no, and let's not play these political games. I say no to the pork. I say no to the earmarks. Thank you very much.
Ms. Murday, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. I also oppose earmarks. I don't think that the federal government should be directly controlling and micromanaging our lives here. I think if there is funding, it needs to come from the federal government to the state, from the state to the county, from the county to the locals. We need to be holding people accountable at the local level if those funds are mismanaged. What I would like to do is kind of steer negotiations in ways that will be beneficial to us. For instance, I would definitely talk up nuclear power because we've got Duke here. I would definitely support anything in favor of small farms because we've got a lot of those in the area. So I think that we can actually probably get more done and more funding to the area if we just negotiate properly. But I don't want to see earmarks continue.
I'm for earmarks if it's there to provide to be able to help the communities, because sometimes the funding, they have plans for communities, may not have enough funding. So if we can have people to, like myself, when I get elected, if you ask me to be able to come and help with a project that can be able to help benefit the community, yes, and I'm for it, because we need some kind of government regulation over things. So sometimes companies take advantage of the smaller, the consumers. So yes, I'm for it if it's for helping benefit the communities. But if it's not, then I'm not for it. Thank you.
So I am a political outsider, and I do think that we use a lot of terms, and from the feedback that I'm getting from the people in my district, they're telling me they want less government. People want to get back to the basics: God, family, and country. So for me, the budget needs to be balanced. We're spending money that we don't have. I think what the people in District 3 want is someone who's sitting at this table to go in and to make decisions where they're held accountable and they're transparent. So those are the top issues for me when it comes to the economy and what we're using our money for. We're using our taxpayers' money for.
The question is, if elected, what changes would you look to implement, and how would you go about getting those changes through the House?
I think one of the biggest changes that we need to make is accountability in government. Now, I'm a business guy. I have a business background, and this is how I'm used to operating. I'm used to being given a mission, a budget, a goal. I have an annual review. There'd be an annual review process. There'd be a performance plan. This is what you're going to achieve, and you go out and you achieve it. And if you don't do well, you're not compensated as well. You don't get a bonus. Maybe you get demoted. Maybe you get fired if you don't do your job. That's the kind of business culture that I'm used to. Well, government seems like it's radically different. So I don't understand how since 2001 we haven't balanced a budget. And that's been okay. We've been allowed to amass a $34 trillion debt, and that's been okay. And members of Congress can still stay in power. Why aren't they getting fired? Or maybe there should be accountability where if they don't balance the budget, you don't get paid. It feels like a basic thing. It's now to the point where it's roughly $100,000 of debt for each person in the United States. Now, I have a family of 7, so that's $700,000 that I'm in debt due to a federal obligation. The debt's out of control. So I think we really need accountability in government. We need to figure out how do we keep our elected officials accountable so that they actually get results for the people. And I think that's the biggest complaint that I see as I go around the district. It's like, what are they doing up there? Why aren't we getting results? What is happening in Washington? So accountability is what I want to figure out. How do we bring that to Washington? How do we enact that? How do we pass, like the lady said, a balanced budget amendment? Maybe that's, if you don't balance the budget, you don't get paid.
Mr. Healy. And do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, yes. It all boils down to this 1,000-page bill again. We've got to bring back transparency and accountability to government. We need to end business as usual. No more good old boy system, no more kicking back to somebody's company or lobbyists. I will work with my colleagues in the House and the Republican side, and what Democrats will come. It should be a bipartisan issue to balance a budget, but I will work with my Republican colleagues to make the cuts necessary to balance a budget. 2001 was the last budget that they balanced, which is pathetic. How many of you can go 1 month without balancing your home budget? Or if you have a small business, how many of you can go a week without making sure you're not spending more than you bring in? We got to get our financial house in order. And I will also hold President Trump accountable to the pledge that he made in his first term. He said he would never sign another omnibus bill. I will hold him to that. It needs to start with the president, who needs to send Congress a balanced budget. And I will hold him to that, and I will never vote for an omnibus bill. I will oppose it and work with my colleagues to make the cuts necessary. But transparency, we've got to be transparent with the American people. We've got to be transparent with your money. This is your money. You're the one footing the bill for $35 trillion and no budget in 23 years. That ought to piss off every single American like it has me. That's it.
Mr. LaPierre. And do you need me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am. So there are 4 things that a congressperson will do. They vote, and of course we are in District 3 and we will vote conservatively. We provide constituent services to the voters and the people of South Carolina District 3. And then we educate, And then we use the power of the platform, the power of the bully pulpit. And the last two, I want to take to another level. I want to be a congressman who educates and educates and educates more. And I want to be somebody that blows up the bully pulpit, that blows up the platform. I will not be down in the basement when I am your congressman, I promise you. That's not my nature. So what, in the education space and in the power of the platform, what can I do? What I can do is lead the citizens back to the Constitution. I am a constitutional conservative and I live in a constitutional republic. Government has 27 enumerated powers. Congress has 18 enumerated powers. And I can tell you, you all know this, the lines are blurred. The president takes up lots more power than he deserves. The Congress gives away their power to the lobbyists. They let them do all the homework. And then the Supreme Court, when they're activist, when we have activist Supreme Court, they take the role of the Congress and the president. So the lines are blurred. We need to be pulling ourselves back to our founding fathers' ideals. It's so important. And I'll give you just one thought. Separation of church and state. It is the biggest lie and the biggest myth in the history of our government. Thank you.
Ms. Murday,
Please do repeat the question.
did you want me to repeat it?
Yes.
Okay, sure, absolutely. If elected, what changes would you look to implement and how would you go about getting those changes through the House?
So I've already told you about the changes that I'd like to implement, for instance, the town halls and passing constitutional amendments. So I'm going to answer this question pretty pragmatically because it is difficult to get change made. We haven't succeeded in a very long time. And constitutional amendments are especially difficult to get people on board for. But that's what I want to do. So I think the first thing is to make sure that the current group of politicians is unaffected. Say we're going to stage in term limits, in 20 years, we'll make it 8. In 15 years, we'll make it, just keep staging it in so that people gradually grow used to these things. And so that the current people sitting in the House get to look really good because, oh yeah, I voted for term limits, but it's not actually going to affect them. And then I think we can get people on board with it. The second thing is that negotiation is one of my special skills. So there are 2 tactics I use there. The first one is just figuring out where people's interests align. Usually there is some place, somehow you can find that 2 very different people will actually go for the same goal. And then the second thing is just proceed through a rational discussion until it stops. Wherever it stops, someone isn't saying something. Because if they were, you could just sort it out, right? So trying to figure out what is not being said is really where I particularly shine. And then I'll address this later, but I've also been given some particular kind of grace or inspiration that has been helping me considerably. And I think I'll be able to get this done.
Transparency. Both parties need to work together to be able to tear down the wall, because right now Congress has a wall with both parties. They're bickering and fighting. So what I've come to do is build bridges to connect with people. So unity is what helps our communities. So listen to our voices in the community, bring it forth towards Congress so we can be able to have a transparent dialogue to figure out what we can do to be able to help our communities and be able to bring forth concrete change and be able to help our district be the leading charge for the nation, to be able to look at our district as one that's congresspersons listen to the people, and that's my goal, is to bring forth that Congress to work together with both sides, be bipartisan, so we can be able to help people. And that's my goal. Thank you.
So I already spoke about accountability and transparency. I think the bottom line is we need to focus on the budget. I mentioned a balanced budget earlier. I think that's the most critical area right now that we need to focus on. We should eliminate federal government programs that pick winners and losers. By that, I mean giving away our tax dollars that individuals are working hard for. So we're working hard. Our families are struggling to make ends meet, and we're giving the money away to those who choose not to work. Not only is it giving away our money, but it's giving away our dignity. We're creating a handout class of citizens, and we can't have that. So these individuals will always, once we start this, rely on the federal government for everything. They don't have to work. They don't have to contribute. And in the process, our common sense voices have been muted. We give up our rights and allow them to step in and take over. So those are the changes that I would like to see made in Washington. I think we don't need to sit on the sidelines any longer. We do need to stand up for our traditional values and those things I mentioned earlier about God and family and country.
Mr. Bishop, do you need me to repeat the question?
I find these questions to be really difficult to answer because you've got three, politics is dynamic, it changes, it moves pretty quick, and what's happening. And the question is what do we want to do in the House? Well, it depends on who controls the White House and the Senate and the House. If we're looking at a presidency of Joe Biden, Democrat-controlled Senate, Democrat-controlled House, to be honest with you, first thing we're going to be doing is blocking some things we haven't even discussed in any of these debates. The Democrats very well could move with Senator Sinema leaving the Senate. They could very well be moving to change the rules of the filibuster and make D.C. the 51st state. That's something we haven't even discussed. There also is an effort underfoot, believe it or not, to pack the Supreme Court. It's only a statute. If the Democrats change the rules of the filibuster, they control the White House, the Senate, and the House. We could have 13 Supreme Court justices in 2025. Those are two things that could easily happen if Democrats control all branches of government. As for us, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, we've got President Trump is Republican, the Senate's in Republican control, and the House, we retained Republican control. I think the first thing that we need to do as Republicans, I would suggest, is institute a 10% rule in the House that it requires 10% of the House Republicans to agree to remove the Speaker. I'm not in favor of what we've seen lately with Speaker McCarthy when he was removed because of the actions of just a few members. And now we've got it again. Next week, Marjorie Greene Taylor's calling for another vote on the floor of the Senate to remove Speaker Johnson. I'll be honest with you, I think I could do this job really well for this district, but I'm not interested in going up there if you want me to be part of a circular firing squad. That's not what I want. I would be miserable in the job if that's what you want the next representative to do, to just go up there and frankly fight with Republicans. I don't have any interest in doing it if that's what you want. Last point, getting back to what we were discussing on the previous question about spending, let's be clear of the way this works. I want a very small pie, very small cake. Think of it in that way. Once we agree the size of the cake or the pie we're going to bake, I'm going to cut a slice for my district. And if somebody in another district decides they don't want one, you know what? I'll take theirs too. That's what those projects are about. So if you don't want yours and you want to say, nope, I don't want to ask for any pie, that's fine. I'll take your slice as well. But again, those are all things that I think that we can do in this district. But I want to work with our local towns, cities, counties, economic development agencies to be a partner in those spending items. That's the one thing that I would say I would be very, very different than Congressman Duncan was previously, is that I want to really work with those towns, because that's something where a congressman can make an outsized influence in what they do. I would love to tell you single-handedly I could solve the major issues of the country. I can't. But I can have a real impact in working with our local communities. Thank you.
And now we'll go into a segment with your 2-minute wrap-up on why people should vote for you. Mr. Healy, we will start with you.
want to start off by saying thank you to the chamber for putting this together, and thank you for each of you for coming out that are concerned with the direction of our nation. We have many, many issues facing our nation, and they have to be dealt with. Starting with, if you're sick and tired of this, 1,000-page bills that nobody reads, that are adding to our $34 trillion in debt with no budget since 2001, no balanced budget since 2001, then it's time to end business as usual. If you're tired of this, I'm your person. I will fight for you, for we the people, to restore fiscal sanity back to our nation's capital, to Congress. I will read every bill. The Constitution needs to be obeyed. I will obey the Constitution. I will be emboldened to nobody but you, we the people. I will accept no PAC money. I don't want their money, because I represent you. I've been in the district 27 years, and I know the issues at hand that need to be done. President Trump is going to need a army of MAGA folks and strong conservatives that won't compromise in order to prevent 4 more years of Democratic and establishment witch hunts. We don't need that. How many people are pissed off at looking at these witch hunts? President Trump being persecuted in front of this new judge up in New York that just fined him $9,000. The insanity needs to end. We got judicial reform, we got the border, we got this financial crisis. So many issues facing our country. You can always go to votephilhealy.com for more information and to learn more about me. I look forward to earning your trust and your vote on June 11th. Thank you.
Mr. LaPierre.
I believe that I am the best qualified applicant on the stage. I think my executive level experiences and my knowledge of the deeper issues of public policy, I think are very, very evident. I do not talk in generalities. I give you specific strategic plans on how to get things done. Over the last 6 or 7 forums that we've had, I have repeatedly challenged my opponents to up their game. Stop reading your resumes, stop talking in generalities, and give me the deeper substance of public policies. And to their credit, I've seen some improvement, and I want to thank them for that. This next part, by the way, that is what executives do. They raise the level of expectation. The last chapter of this campaign, I am going to transition this forum, these discussions, to the character issue. We need, whoever you vote for, whoever you elect, we need someone with impeccable character, someone that our children and our grandchildren can look up to, someone who is a statesperson, someone who can stand on their own 2 feet and take the incoming heat, because you're going to be swimming with the sharks. You're going to be swimming with the Harvards and the Yales and the Cornells, and they will tear you up. I lived with them for 4 years. I know how they think. They're rabid. They're, in many respects, evil. So we need to vote for someone who is prepared, who is an executive, and who can hit the ground running. I have the experience. I have the results. Please vote Mike LaPierre, LaPierreforHouse.com. Thank you very much.
Ms. Murday?
The primary reason to vote for me on June 11th is that it's supposed to be me. My family got here on the Mayflower. We've been here for 400 years. This country is my family's legacy, and I'm not going to let it fall apart. I was paralyzed for 10 years. After the first two, the doctors gave up on me. I taught myself neuroimmunology while I was still struggling to read, and 2 years later found the first drug that allowed me to start walking again. It was a very long recovery, and I registered for this race last January before I was actually completely better. The timeline was that I registered and I had a really bad year. I had a month of paralysis. I had a month of taking care of my mom after knee surgery. I lost momentum. And then my mom texts me, "Have you seen the news?" And the scandal with Jeff came out. Then I found the last puzzle piece that allowed me to become fully better. And 1 month later, Jeff Duncan retired. That's when everyone else registered. I can't, I obviously can't let you all into my life in my head, but I have absolutely been called to this, and the weirdest part of it was the final puzzle piece is a DNA sequence that I have, which has not been found in any other human being. And I worked in genomics for a long time, and I didn't believe it. I'm on the 4th round of testing just because it's very strange. But I did have a very unique experience during those 10 years. I am definitely going to be able to take the heat, having pulled myself back from paralysis and every other kind of mental and physical disability. And I hope for your vote on June 11th.
Mr. Best?
I want to thank you again for inviting me to come here this morning. First and foremost, what makes me the best candidate is that I'm 3 words, CCI. I'm committed, I'm compassionate, and I'm intentional. And that means that I'm committed to be able to break the status quo, tear down walls, and build bridges. I'm compassionate about people in the community. I'm compassionate about teachers that work long hours, they're underpaid, law enforcement that go out there and fight for us each and every day, social workers, same that go into the community that deal with mental health. I'm compassionate about our students that don't have lack of opportunities to be able to better themselves in their situations, because I was one that grew up in the 15% that had to fight for opportunity to better myself. I'm intentional to bring integrity back. We lost integrity. I'm a candidate with integrity. Integrity is something that person has when no one else is around, that they can be able to still hold up their creed and values. So I'm a candidate that has integrity. And that's what we're missing in the public office as men and women, leadership of integrity. So June 11th, I would like to have your vote. Vote for a man with integrity. Thank you.
Ms. Biggs?
So I'm running on the platform to heal our nation. I feel like we're broken fiscally, mentally, and spiritually. Political outsiders have done nothing but make this problem worse. So for me, I want to be that servant leader for you in Washington. And I say servant leader because I'm here to serve you, not the other way around as some politicians have made their positions. So my background in the United States Air Force, when I was deployed, I was over the officer in charge of a crew. The reason I think I make the best candidate is because I work with diverse groups. Everyone was born in different states, some in different countries. They have different ideas about what we were doing. But I was able to sit down at the table, work with those people with different backgrounds, and get the mission accomplished. I'm not going to Washington to fight. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and go to work. And I've been in a combat zone, so I'm not easily intimidated, and they don't scare me one bit. My name is Sheri Biggs. You can look me up, sheribiggs.com, SHERIBIGGS, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Mr. Bishop.
I really don't know if I'm the best candidate, to be honest with you. I mean, the voters ultimately get to decide that. That will be a decision for them. But I know this. I started by saying I was a bit of an accidental candidate, and I really am. And my wife of 27 years, who's teaching it, she would be here today. She's at Getty's Middle School teaching social studies. I've got 4 kids now. Preston, the guy in the back there filming, that's my oldest. He's a senior at Clemson. And I've got boy-girl twins, Ella and Will. They're sophomores. Ella's a sophomore at Clemson. My son, Will, is a sophomore at the Air Force Academy out in Colorado. And my daughter, Margaret's a junior at Easley High School. So I'm at an age where I feel comfortable that I could do this job. I'll be honest with you, I never would have wanted to do this when my kids were small. I realize what I'm signing up for. I wouldn't have wanted to miss baseball, Little League, rec football, flag football. I wouldn't have wanted to miss any of that. That was too important to me. And I got to do my job from South Carolina working for Lindsay. So I've got to live the best of both worlds. I got to have a small little piece in the big issues of the day, all the while raising my family in Pickens County. But I'm today at an age and a place where I can do this job, and I think I could do it very well. I've got a lot of experience. And I'm trying to follow a path that many other staffers before me have followed. It's very common for staff. In South Carolina alone, Congressman Joe Wilson, and in Columbia, he was a staffer for Floyd Spence. You may see him on TV. Congressman Chip Roy of Texas, he worked for John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. And then Senator Katie Britt of Alabama today, she was chief of staff for Senator Richard Shelby. And the current governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she worked for President Trump. So it's a pretty well-worn path. Will the voters want somebody who knows what they're talking about, to have some experience? That's up to them. And I am perfectly fine and comfortable in handling any decision they make. I think I can hit the ground running. I think I can do the job. I think I can do it very well. I think I could do it in a way that would bring honor and distinction to our district. I think I would be a good partner. But ultimately, the voters decide. And I'm perfectly comfortable with whatever decision they make. But if you like me, take a look. Bishop number 4, like Deshaun Watts and Steve Fuller, number 4, Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Franco.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you, Pamela, Anderson Chamber, for hosting this event and spending time with us and caring about the issues. I'd like to end with a story. And this story starts in 1959 when Fidel Castro and his band of communist radicals seized power on the island of Cuba. Everything changed. Castro's policies were ruthless. He eliminated the free press. He jailed political dissidents. He nationalized all industry and business. And he instituted one-party state. So we saw one man, one ideology destroy a nation. My mother's family experienced this calamity. They were farmers in Cuba during this time, and they disagreed with Castro and his policies, and they resisted. They were part of a plot to store arms at a neighboring farm, but that plot was discovered by the communists, so things got dangerous, and they had to flee. Later on, they would find out that a family friend that was also involved in the plot would be executed for his role in it. My family received political asylum in the United States, and it was a church in the upstate of South Carolina that supported my family. A place to stay, a job to get us on our feet. And that's the reason why my family has been rooted the last 60 years, not in South Florida, but in South Carolina. From a young age, I was captivated by the promise of America. I would devour books on American history. I loved reading biographies of the great leaders of this country. I would read stories about immigrants like the Pilgrims and the Quakers who would come to this country seeking political freedom, religious freedom, economic opportunity. And these stories resonated deeply with me as a young boy because I knew that their story was my story. What their family was looking for, my family was looking for. And I'm forever grateful to this country for the rights, freedoms, and opportunities I've been given. I'm proud to be an American. I feel great debt to this country and a deep desire to get back and serve. My name is Franky Franco. That's where my passion comes from. That's why I'm running.